flush. Part anger, part embarrassment spread across his youthful cheeks, and to the edges of his powdered wig, clashing miserably with the rusty orange of his livery. "Mrs. West will box my ears." Her eyes travelled in the direction the stranger had been walking, but of course he was long out of sight. She had caught no more than a glimpse of him, just the back of a drab greatcoat and tall beaver hat, an identical costume to the one sported by dozens of gentlemen strolling and striding along the busy street. "I'm sure it was an accident, Lewis. I hadn't any business stopping in the midst of all this bustle." The crowd still surged around them, oblivious to the incident. "But I think it's best if my mother hears nothing of the matter. Now," she nodded in the opposite direction, "let's make our way back to Bartlett House, shall we?" Lewis sent a glance toward the package. If he had been carrying it, as was his duty, doubtless a passer-by would have been unable to knock it from his hands as easily as it had been knocked from hers. But Amanda had refused when she first left the shop with it, and she made no reply to this silent repetition of his offer. He bowed. "As you wish, my lady." Away from Bond Street, the crowd thinned, and though the streets of Mayfair were not empty, they were quiet enough that one could pick out the notes of the birds perched high in the lush treetops. Now and again the air was split by the cheerful shrieks of children, barely contained within the nurseries whose windows had been flung open to the fresh morning air. With a rueful roll of her aching shoulder, Amanda slowed her steps, but did not stop again. She had lost a little of her taste for soaking up the sunshine. Perhaps later, in the seclusion of the garden at Bartlett House, while the boys made observations for their project about bees. But first she intended to meet with the housekeeper about the week's menus, if Mamma had not already done it. Then she had some invitations to which she wished to respond, if Mamma had not already written on her behalf. And of course, George, Lord Dulsworthy, had promised to call on her today, and Mamma was predictably delighted at the prospect. A swallowed sigh pushed Amanda's shoulders a notch lower. How had things ended up thus? When they reached Bartlett House, she paused to collect herself as Lewis preceded her up the stairs. While he held open the door, she ascended, watching the toes of her brown leather half-boots peep from beneath her skirts as they landed squarely on each step. Inside, all was quiet, unsettlingly so, given that 2 young boys lived within. Matthews the butler came forward with a reproving glance for Lewis and a hand outstretched for the package she carried. But before he reached her, the hand fell to his side, and the movement folded into a bow. Lewis must have communicated, whether through mouthed words or gestures, that the assistance would be unwelcome. "Mrs. West rang for her morning cocoa not a quarter of an hour ago, my lady," Matthews reported. Mamma was having a lie-in? Good. And the boys? "In the drawing-room with the fencing-master, my lady." "Oh, is it Tuesday?" The butler very nearly smiled. "No, my lady. When Mr. Jacobs arrived, he indicated that Lord Dulsworthy had requested the change." Ah. Not, of course, that she begrudged George having a say in her son's upbringing. Her husband's will had named both of them guardians, after all, and in the first months of her widowhood she had been grateful to have a friend in Lord Dulsworthy, to whom she could turn when the inevitable questions arose. Grateful, too, to her mother, who had swooped into Bartlett House and taken command, so that Amanda could focus all of her attention on her grieving boys. But months had turned to years, nearly 3 of them, and though the Countess of Kingston was perfectly capable of handling matters herself, over time, people seemed to have forgotten it. Including, occasionally, Amanda herself. "Did Mr. Jacobs happen to say what—" She bit off the question, saving it for later. For Mr. Jacobs himself, perhaps, or for George when he called. "Thank you, Matthews. Please send Mrs. Hepplewise to me in my sitting-room." If Mamma had risen late, then the matter of the menus was yet to be decided, and Amanda could finally enjoy a week without— "Certainly, my lady. I'll tell her as soon as she returns from Mrs. West's chambers." Though tempted, Amanda did not suck in a sharp breath of disappointment or grimace, or even shake.